this evening, and we're gonna have a second guest who's gonna come on and talk for just a minute because they've got something big at City Council tomorrow. And Carol Ann sent emails out about it earlier this evening, but there's some big fish going on. Let's see. But you know what? In the meantime, let's talk for just a second. I'll hit the big fish. Where's my agenda? I forgot to print out a copy. I should have already been to Michigan, and then I would have my copier and everything. I just want to talk about the good neighbor notices. Did anybody, did everybody read the May minutes for the meetings? Anybody want to make a motion about the minutes from May's meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I don't know who that was, but Sandy, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. All right. And let's see here. I want to talk about the good neighbor notice, and I'm going to hit the good neighbor notice while we've got everybody on here. On the 22nd of this month, the good neighbor notice is coming for a workshop at City Council. We have worked with, believe it or not, the land use attorneys, city attorneys, and the and city staff on and hammered out something that we can all live with that expands the good neighbor notice. You should have gotten an email about that in the last couple weeks of the updated items that are going to be included. We really wanted to push for a bigger notification, but the city, the land use attorneys, really, the land use attorneys actually asked that the signs be bigger. So we're going to go from an 18 by 24 sign that's white and navy blue to a 48 by 48 sign that is yellow and beautiful and has giant words, boxes for the words, so you should be able to read them. And they will also include QR codes on those boxes, and the new good neighbor notices that we get in the mail will also have a QR code that will take you directly to Acela for that particular project. So those are some of the changes that we're going to see. One other thing is that one of the land use attorneys suggested it in Hillsborough County. They do a notice of filing, which means that when somebody files something with the city, that we'll get a notification then, and then get the 30 days out before the hearing. So there's going to be more opportunity for us to give input before then. The only exception to that is the design exception, which currently is not noticed, but we're obviously going to have to make some changes for that. So, and that's one of the things if Mary Lou has signed in. Yes, Mary Lou is here. And we're going to talk a little bit. She's going to talk to you a little bit about the historic overlay. And Mary Lou, are you there?
I'm here. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Lou Bailey. I live in Hyde Park. I'm currently president of Hyde Park Preservation, Inc. And I appreciate being able to jump on your agenda for a couple of minutes tonight. As I think some of you have experienced in your neighborhoods, there's kind of a threat to the special protections that might be unique to a Seminole Heights or an Ybor or other places. And we're going through that in Hyde Park right now. I'm sure you recognize that Hyde Park is a historic district. And as such, we have a set of guidelines called the Historic Hyde Park Design Guidelines. And they're based on the Secretary of Interior's guidelines for historic preservation. And when people want to deviate from those guidelines when they're renovating their house, they have to go to the ARC. You guys might know in your neighborhood, some of them go to the VRB, but we have an architectural review commission that's staffed by architects and preservationists, and they review the cases. And make sure that what people are doing to the homes that are designated as historic actually allows them to stay in a preservation status. And we've got a neighbor who did not get his way at the Architectural Review Commission and is appealing to City Council. The council hearing is tomorrow morning. And it's beyond one guy in his one house, because in his appeal, which was over 50 pages, he's basically asserting that the guidelines don't have any authority or bearing. And he's seeking to undermine the ability of the local governance, the local entities to enforce the guidelines that for us in Hyde Park are very precious, because many of us purposely, most of us purposely bought a home in the historic district. We've spent hours and hours and hours and money preserving our bungalows and, keeping things intact. And so we do not want to see the ARC's authority to implement the guidelines or the integrity of the guidelines swept away. And so Carol Ann circulated a brief summary that I wrote up on the issue, and has asked you guys to vote offline. And we're not asking you to weigh in on this one property owner's matter. What we're asking Than to do is serve as an advocate, as you often do, for neighborhoods collectively. And in our case, a key ingredient that makes our neighborhood special are the historic preservation guidelines. And we'd like Carol Ann to be able to speak at council tomorrow that Than stands with Hyde Park, as it does with other neighborhoods, and enabled in order to have the local protections that are codified actually enforced. Does that make sense? Any questions?
And Mary Lou, I'm here to also support this initiative, as you well know.
Yes.
Pat Cimino, president of Historic Hyde Park Neighborhood Association.
Thank you, Pat.
I'd like to say a couple of things on our overlays and our districts. Some of you are presently beginning to work on overlays. And I have to encourage you to make them just as strong as you can. What happens is we make the overlays, we think we've done a good job, and then all of a sudden they go before the zoning department and design exception 1, design exception 2, and a lot of things are overruled. I think if we have an overlay and within our community, one of the things we can do is let the realtors know that if they're going to sell property within those overlays, that there are rules. And if those rules are not adhered to, they have to go before City Council to try and change them. So that's a little something that I'm proposing in the future, is that we find some way to let for the realtors, let the people know that those overlays are in place. We're having a lot of trouble in my neighborhood right now because it had been the best kept secret for about 50 years that we were in the plant district. And now the last 20 years, between Domain Homes and Weekly and a few others, we practically destroyed any of the older homes that we've had, the bungalows and that sort of thing. And that's also because we did not have the foresight to have an overlay. Half of our community is under the West Tampa overlay. And we are butting heads constantly. And one of the issues that we're having with is the design exception 1s, and you'll hear I talk a little bit about them. There's 2. Design exception 1s mean something's happening in your neighborhood that they want to change, whether it's the setback, whether it's the height of a fence, whether it's parking, whether it's the pitch of the roof, anything that's on your overlay. And they try to change that. If it's a design exception 1, which has to do with anything on an overlay, they can make a zoning decision without letting the community know. Okay. Once they give them that one design exception, the rest of them are pretty much go away, because what they're telling them is your site plan is good. Okay. I recently had lunch with one of the city councilwomen. We talked about the problems that we're having, that items that are going before city council do not have the right information in them. The site plans are wrong. Nobody is challenging the staff reports. The staff reports make statements that aren't true. If you have something that's going before city council, you have to be the one that's going to bring it to their attention. There are only about 3 or 4 of the city council people that actually read something besides the staff report. Some of them go and read the letters, but very seldom all they do is read the staff report and take a summary and see if it's consistent or not consistent. So if you have something that's coming up, you need to put the time in to see what is wrong with it before you go to city council, so you have a plan. And I just, that's all I wanted to say is the overlays, we need to find out a way to make them stronger. We need to find out the language which says, supposedly, somewhere it says that overlays are the primary over other ordinances. So I'm trying to find that, because every time before city council, I make that statement. And quite honestly, I don't know if I'm lying or not, but it seems to work, and that's the way I understand it, is that your overlay takes precedence. So all I'm asking you to do is, if you're working on an overlay, if you're tweaking your overlay, make sure that you've covered as much as you can, because it takes at least a year to do an amendment to your overlay. So keep that in mind. In the meantime, lots can go on in your neighborhood. Up through.
Yes, Sandy, you're absolutely correct. And you're absolutely correct about these staff reports. I had a hearing 2 weeks ago or a week ago. It was last Thursday. Seems like a month. Okay. And it was continued from April. In April, the city staff marked it inconsistent, and then it was consistent. And then planning commission marked it inconsistent, and they changed it to consistent. So 4 different rulings on the same property, 30 days apart. It used to be that we had experts working for the city, and I'm just kind of beginning to wonder at this point. Bottom line is that we support the neighborhoods and we support the overlays, and that, individual people do not get get to violate the rules by speeding either. I mean, the rules are made for everybody. And if we start letting everybody do whatever they want to do, then what's the point? Why do we even have a code? So it's time for city council to say no to too much of everything. Instead of people just, if you want to do a particular thing with a property, then you need to make sure of the rules before you purchase it. You shouldn't buy a historic home if you don't live it, if you don't want to follow the historic rules, in my opinion. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Bueller? Just
No, I'm
pop-
good.
Start talking. I don't have very many. I can't see everybody, so this is new for me.
I thank you guys for letting me ping here, and as he said, Pat is on here. There's 3 neighborhood associations in Hyde Park, and we're all like hand in glove on this and do have a plan for tomorrow's council meeting. But I think adding Than's voice as the protector of all the different unique neighborhoods that form the mosaic of what makes Tampa special is a really strong way to go at this, as opposed to property by property, like Stephanie's saying. So again, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mary Lou. I've already sent an email, and I'll speak during public comment tomorrow. All right, Pete Trella, are you there?
Good evening.
Yes, hello. Do you have a-
Hello.
Hello.
Do you have a face, Pete?
Yeah. I guess I should say, I'm trying to figure out my new iPad, and it doesn't have an iPhone, or it doesn't have an earplug jack to it. So
okay.
I'm on my phone for audio, iPad video. So
Oh, okay.
yes.
So
Yeah.
what that means, Stephanie, is it means every time he speaks, it's gonna light up the one that doesn't have the video. So on your phone, you're probably never going to see his face, but if you're on a computer.
Put
you'll see-
put on gallery mode on your phone, Steph.
There you
Oh,
go.
gallery. I don't
Yeah, yeah.
see.
No,
Kind of special.
well, you know me, I project.
Yes,
Not,
I do.
not that you need
I
to
do.
see my face anyway.
Yeah,
So-
anyway, I wanted everybody else to see your face. But Keith Chella, I just want to give him a little shout out because Carol Ann and I have been to his meetings a couple times and he has a packed house. And I'd like for him to talk about how he gets such good involvement in his neighborhood association that did not exist 2 years ago. So-
Where is Side West, Pete?
Yes, Bayside.
Uh,
West- Go ahead. Pete.
Bayside West is north of Gandy and south of Euclid, in between West Shore and Manhattan. So technically we go all the way to the bay, but we just say West Shore as an idea of boundary. So we cover a good portion of where a lot of the new developments occurring north of Gandy here in South Tampa, which keeps us pretty active, whether we want to be or not. So, but Stephanie, thank you very much for the introduction. Very excited to have the opportunity to kind of speak with you all because I think that I'm hoping this is more of an information sharing session than me kind of just providing a little bit of insight of what we've done to really kind of build our involvement with our neighbors. Because honestly, I think some of this was dumb luck, which I'll take credit for, although credit may not be due. But we started this neighborhood association 2 years ago. Was a very well-established neighborhood association until our neighborhood president unfortunately passed away, and we didn't have any other board members. So our association went defunct, and then a couple of us neighbors heard about the 81 Bay property. We had all kind of were invited for an information sharing session with John Lum and the current manager of the building at the time. Me just being as involved as I can be in government and development and everything like that. I guess John Lum was not prepared for insightful questions. When they walked in, they said, "Oh, this is going to be great. You're going to thank us. You're going to appreciate everything we're doing here." Well, I can tell you the 30 people that were in the room did not appreciate the approach of it. And I had a few folks at the end of it say, "Hey, you were pretty outspoken. You know, it'd be a real good idea if you kind of stay more involved with this." Well, what that turned into is we had the city kind of come out and we're nice enough to send out mailers to every address in our neighborhood for us as kind of a first initial welcome to the neighborhood. We hadn't organized anything yet. But we ended up having about 75, 80 of our 80 folks come from our neighborhood. And at that point, that day was when we started our neighborhood association. So we ended up electing 7 board members, 3 of them at large. We are now down to 5 board members. But just to tell you a little bit kind of how we fast forward from today. So we had a lot of involvement. We were expecting, oh, wow, we had 75 folks. So our first meeting, we should have probably close to about that. First meeting, we had about 17 folks, and that's including the 7 board members and their spouses. So we had realized that the excitement and engagement was not palpable to carry over. So what we did is we were able to finally, after many months, gain access to our checking account for our neighborhood association. And we spent $300 on door hangers. And what we did is we had all 7 of the board members, as well as some other folks that were really active, that wanted to really help us get started. And we literally passed them all out, every door hanger in the neighborhood. At the end of that 2 weeks, I'll say a couple positives and a couple negatives. The positive is we got this information out to so many more folks than we would have if it was word of mouth or electronically. We come to find out there's a lot of folks in our neighborhood, albeit hard to believe, don't have an email address, don't have a working computer, don't have access to know how to access websites or Facebook. And it's a lot more than we think. I also tend to think that those folks that don't have it probably speak up more than others. But it was a really good way for us to get the information out. The negatives of that, we did have a couple of our female board members share some pretty negative interactions with folks, some of them verbally threatening. So I will say this, that'll probably be the last time that we do door hangers because of some of their interactions. One insightful thing that somebody mentioned to us, which was a thought that we're putting in, is when folks do the pest control, you have the companies that put the stakes in the grass that say, do not walk your dog. Well, that's a way for us to be able to share the information, not touch the mailbox, which is against the law, and not have to have us walk up to the door. which allows folks to be a little bit more comfortable with that interaction. Just another idea, something that we're kind of spitballing among our board, but the door hangers were it. That was the best thing we could have done. It had the rest of our meetings for the rest of the year. Highly recommended if you have the volunteerism to be able to do that. Honestly, it took me 4 hours and I only covered 3 blocks. So it is a very, very, very physical, especially this time of year, activity. Anyone have any questions on anything so far? Any other ideas on kind of mass producing other than electronically? Because that's something that we're struggling with right now.
I agree. I mean, we do door hangers too out here in Ybor City and Ybor Heights. Sorry, historic Ybor's on tonight, so I'm thinking of them. We do the door hangers too. And honestly, we've just been doing, we're just making sure that we're out there networking with residents and just making connections. I have business cards. And you know, we just it has been a slow process, and we're just going person by person. And then we've also scheduled a couple of meet and greets because not everybody can make it to the meetings that we have on Wednesdays because of their time schedule. So we did a couple of meet and greets, just random nights of the week, and we got some good people who came out. It is very difficult to get engagement and to keep engagement. So we are fortunate enough that we were able to finally secure Reagan Park Center to host our meetings there. So, because a lot of folks can walk there. But we have the same situation. There's a lot of people who don't want to provide an email, or they're just not really into Instagram and Facebook. So it's more just making connections and just making sure we participate in the community events. And because people will come out for events at Reagan Park and they'll go to the local. And we were fortunate enough to have a local church reach out to us. And she's supposed to come to our next meeting next Wednesday. So that'll be a great source of pulling in people that way. I just wanted to back up. Did you say you were considering putting stakes in the grasses on the lawn?
Yeah, so how you kind of have it where you have pest control that says, hey, do not. So it would be a similar idea, a little bit more cost prohibitive because that we looked at those stakes. They're a little pricier than kind of the door hangs, but it just allowed our board members who we have our elections coming. So we really want to make sure that we're really getting engagement for that. So we're just trying to find other ways that we can be more physical. And we do have like the yard signs that we'll put on all the entrances and exits of the neighborhood week of a meeting that says, hey, there's a meeting this week, check our website type of thing. But we needed something, an additional thing to try and get folks more engaged as we get towards our August and our December meetings. And so that was kind of an idea. But we're, for 400 houses we're looking at, it's probably gonna be close to $700. So it's way more than we feel comfortable spending.
Yeah,
that's our issue.
Keep plugging away. It just takes time. Because Sandy, I've talked to Sandy about this, and she said it took them a couple years, but I mean, it just takes consistency. We're fortunate that we have a park, so we really try to leverage the park when people are walking their dog. Like that seems to be like the most common community space. But yeah, kudos to you. That's great that you were able to build that momentum. But we do the same thing, door hangers, and just making sure we're out in the community, connecting with people, whatever chance we can. We're getting ready to partner with Winn-Dixie potentially is going to sponsor us. So we're like super excited. We had to throw in an application with them because we are a non-domestic organization. So the businesses partner up with the local businesses too. And maybe if they allow you to put like a flyer or something, that's also a good way. I know Historic Ybor partners heavily with their businesses. So
Pete, this is Sandy. We also have a lot of people in our neighborhood older, because we are an older neighborhood, the ones that have held out. So we actually have a phone list that we've gotten from people who do not have emails or not some of them don't even have Spectrum and have Wi-Fi. So we actually have a phone list. So if we have an event or we're getting ready to have a meeting, there's a couple of ladies that just call and ask them if they want to attend and if they need a ride. That's one of the things they do. The other thing that we do is, because we're near Midtown, so whenever Midtown, occasionally maybe every quarter, we go to Midtown for Trivia Pursuit Night. And that doesn't cost us any money, but we kind of all sit together, for Trivia Pursuit and do something like that. I understand, I think that at St. Patrick's down by you, they have a bingo. I don't know how often it is, and it's $25 for dinner and then the bingo. It might be that you can talk to them and see if you can have one night that is just for your association. And not that they have to do anything special, just see if you can all sit together and do something like that. The other thing that we're contemplating, and this is something that Oakford Park did, they're actually putting yard signs. I'm a proud member of our Oakford Park community. They started out with the board, and that's what we're going to do, the board members using it. And then for those that wanted to participate, we would have those available also to them. On your yard signs about don't put your dog in this and that, there's just been a huge undertaking by land use about signs that can go in yards, because our big thing is parking. So we had sent out the city's rules on parking, which had to do with you can't park 10 feet from a side, a driveway. You can't park behind a driveway. You can't park 30 feet from a stop sign. So we were going to make up yard signs like that, and for the people that want them, can put them in their yard. But we were told we could not, because, and especially because we wanted to make them look official and actually put the ordinance down of what they could not and could not do. So the only thing that you can do is put a no parking sign up, okay? And there's a number that you can call now, because between code enforcement and mobility, they now have officers, I guess you call them, that if you call them even over the weekend now, they will come and either warn the people not to do that or ticket it. Now, in the meantime, one of the city councilmen is talking to them about that, because if you can't put that information out, you cannot give them a warning, because a lot of people don't understand that. But we have sent it out to our members to let them know that if they choose to use that avenue, this is what they need to do to use it. But those are some of the things that we have done to get participation.
Yeah, and those are some great additional ideas. The phone list, Sandy, I'm taking from you for those folks, because a lot of folks are asking, hey, do the door hangers again, do the door hangers. I'd rather just get the phone list of those dozen folks.
Yeah.
And call them the week before. And they're offering the right, I think is wonderful. A couple other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Mary Lou again.
Hey, Mary Lou.
I was listening to everybody's great ideas, and I have two things to say. One is that an issue drives people out. So, for example, like we have a parking crisis in Hyde Park right now, and we had a public meeting at a community center, like Mimi was talking about using a community center. We had 175 people attend. So
I was there.
Yeah, you can build a lot of momentum when you're rallying around a real issue, and then that demonstrates the value of the association organizing the citizens. So that's one thing I want to say. The second thing I didn't hear mentioned that is something that we use is we have street captains. So on each of our streets, we have a volunteer, and they don't have to come to meetings and, do a lot of administration or anything. But what they do is try to get the word out on the street when something's going down, whether it's an issue or a meeting is coming up or whatever. We try to get them to talk it up with their neighbors, and we put in their hands just cheap paper flyers that aren't as expensive as the door hangers, and ask them to just go put them around, on people's porches. We don't really like them going on the porches for the reasons that you just talked about, but going and dropping those handwritten flyers. And that helps not only with people who are older and may not like technology, but because we are so all overwhelmed with emails and stuff. And so you don't get that much physical stuff anymore if it's not a political campaign mail, right? So anyway, that's just another tactic that I would throw into your hopper.
Yeah, and Mary Lou, that's a great point. So we also use block captains. Here we have 5 out of our 27 blocks. We do have 5 block captains. So it certainly helps a lot in areas where we'll have folks show up where they're saying, oh, hey, Rebecca couldn't make it. She said she was our block captain, but I wanted to come to make sure I can share with our neighbors. So That is definitely a hidden value in those folks. Just wish we could duplicate all of them. And kind of, to speak to a little bit of what Mary Lou just said, we do not send out a lot of communication to our neighborhood. We do about once a month, we'll do an email, kind of just recapping any updates. Really, it's kind of just an extension of the Tampa Cares newsletter. And then any small updates. We do the same thing on our social media. We really try and limit the amount that we send out so that when folks do see communication from us, they realize it's valuable to read it, because it is not something, generally we're always putting in a lot of information in there so that they think, oh, maybe the header may not be something interesting to me, but maybe there's something further down in the body of that email that can make a big difference on whether they open it and actually look and see the information. The other thing too is, so we have quarterly meetings. We have them, try and have them minimum of 6 months in advance. And we're very fortunate that St. Pat's right across from us allows us to utilize their social hall. Offers enough space as you could possibly imagine, clean restrooms, nice, brightly lit. So it's very easy for our members to make it there. And then the last thing is, and that's the other thing, kind of speaking to not bombarding or over kind of communicating to our members, is we try and structure everything. Our biggest thing is our neighborhood cleanups, where we'll get together every quarter. And we do it in the morning. We provide donuts and we provide coffee from Dunkin' Donuts. It's just another way to get maybe some of our younger folks kind of out and about, because we know a lot of them, a 7:30 meeting, having young kids generally isn't the best thing out. But generally Saturday mornings, when they see my kids forcing my 4-year-old and 6-year-old out there, donut in one hand, rubber glove in another, picking up trash, they tend to get a little bit more involved in those areas. And then we tend to see those folks, whether it's the mom or the dad, being able to make it to those meetings. But yeah, having a big topic, that's the biggest thing. 8-1 Bay is really what brought us together. No one here in the neighborhood wanted to see what's currently happening there. So that was a big thing that really kind of helped build our interest in these meetings. But then any type of development, we'll go and we'll say, hey, next month, our agenda, we're going to talk about the 3 new restaurants that are opening here, or, demolition occurring over here. So we try and hold enough information for our meetings. Generally more of the fun stuff that we'll share and disseminate during the meeting. So it also tries to help drive those folks coming. Anything that's pertinent or time, has a time on it that we need to get it done, that's something that we'll blast out to our folks immediately. But just, a couple small little things that have really been successful for us, and hopefully continue to be successful and get a lot more folks. We're about to add another 1,200 residents here in the next 2 years within our neighborhood. So, hopefully we can get those folks on our side, even though they're moving into places that we were against. So no harm, no foul, I guess we should say. But thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity. And thank you, Stephanie, for asking me to
Oh,
join.
no, thank you for coming. I think this generated a lot of good discussion and good ideas for people like me who are terrible neighborhood presidents. Would somebody like to be the president of Gandy Civic Association? Because I'm a little overwhelmed. But anyway, no, I think these are some good ideas, and I need to have my folks sitting in on this meetings to hear what's going on. I don't know why they don't come.
This is me, in Hyde Park. I will protest your comments. You and Carol Ann are incredible advocates for your neighborhoods as well as others. And I look at it as an inspiration. And I think we do need to collaborate more as neighborhoods. Absolutely. Which you all have been trying to champion. So that's my protest.
Thank you, Pat. We appreciate you too, because you show up and smack people in the head with it verbally. And we do appreciate that. Does anybody have any other, I cannot see the agenda and my phone at the same time. So I'm kind of special here tonight. I really did. I knew that I was going to be out of town, but I think I've hit all the big stuff that we've got on here.
Stephanie,
Yes.
good neighbor notice update was the next item on the agenda, and then the CARES newsletter.
Okay, and I just want to remind everybody to look at your CARES newsletter. Make sure that you're on the email list for the CARES newsletter. And just take, it takes a few minutes, but
Oh, now we're losing her.
Really,
Now we're losing you, Stephanie.
okay, I'm sorry. You hear me?
Yeah, you're okay right now.
Okay, but make sure that you're signed up for the CARES newsletter because there's stuff in there that you're not getting notifications for. And then of course, the good neighbor notice with the expansion of the notification area, it's that what they are presenting to council is moving it from 250 to 300 feet. The bigger signs that are gonna be yellow, much larger. The notification of filing, which means that when somebody files for a change of land use, they will be doing a notification then for the neighborhoods. Not sure about the direct neighbors, but certainly for the neighborhoods, it's gonna have the QR code, and we've asked for a, what is it, 11 by 14 copy of a site plan be included. Now, we know that's not huge, but it also, it kind of gives us two things. One, it's bigger than 8.5 by 11, and that's only to be provided to the neighborhood leaders. But it gets us something of substance, because just like Pete said, people like to have that tactile feeling. I'm a very, very strong believer in having written things. Whenever I have something that I want to make sure all my neighbors know about, I leave handouts on their doors. And I understand what Pete's saying about how scary it is sometimes to deal with people. But I'm a little crazier than most. So just making sure that we're aware, and if anybody needs us to reach out, and we are totally there. Last Thursday's city council meeting was amazing because we had East Tampa, we had West Tampa, we had South Tampa. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but we had folks, we had T-Tag there. We had folks from all over the city who worked together to get what we needed done. And it was just awesome. Now, I'm going to tell you that Carol Ann and I didn't get home till almost 2:30.
Mhm.
I think Sandy was out later than that. But Tampa Heights had one. So, you know, please reach out to us. We are there to support you guys if you need it. And if you need more bodies, sometimes we can be there in person, and sometimes we may have to go online. But we are certainly there. And that's, you know, I don't know if I'm the best at neighborhood engagement, but I'm certainly there if you need me, and we will get other people to be involved and write letters and stomp and fuss and cut if we can. So does anybody have any other questions, concerns, comments?
Yes,
Or
Stephanie. So it's Mimi. So I had I love what you said, because that's exactly why I invited Chris Curry is the president of Historic Ybor City. And I invited him tonight to this meeting so that he can speak about an important topic that they're experiencing in their area. And Chris, if you're on, or if it's Stephanie, I don't know who's on. I just see Historic Ybor City. But whoever's representing tonight. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is he on?
I see the historic, yeah, I think he's coming on. Someone's on from Historic Ybor. I just assumed it was Chris, but maybe it's Stephanie. Chris, yeah, it's Chris. Hi, Chris. So
Hey,
there's,
how's it going, everybody?
I'll let him take it away.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, how's it going? Good to
Great.
see everybody. So tomorrow we have a pretty big thing going on in City Council. You know, similar to you know, the discussion about overlay districts and how, you know, one change in protocol can make a big change downstream for all of us that's potentially not good. What we're dealing with and have been for the past couple of years is really a parking lot that has been vacant land for, you know, decades, and the current owners are 717 Parking, and they during COVID wanted to, you know, essentially turn this into a new parking lot. We got wind of it and have been opposing it, but you know, as also discussed earlier, the kind of planning department, the zoning administrator, and the city attorney's office really seem to be, you know, I don't know whether it's incompetent or lazy or there's some sort of nepotism going on, but essentially what's going on is they're allowing this letter that allegedly was submitted to the city 20 years ago, come in as evidence. And, quite frankly, we think the letter has been fabricated, and it's just really bad. So we've obviously talked to Stephanie and Dan before, and reached out to some of our local folks, but whether it's a parking lot in Hyde Park or whether it's street parking in Hyde Park, it's really sort of a problem. And I think the underlying issue is that we have people in our planning and zoning department that maybe don't really care anymore, or they're not really aware of what's going on. Some of the folks they have in there are very new and came from jobs completely unrelated. There are some definitely good people there as well, but we will be there at City Council tomorrow, and obviously the public's welcome to make any kind of comments in the morning. But we would really appreciate and value any kind of feedback that you could give City Council about, codes that are on the books now need to be not only followed, but enforced. When you have rogue operators that aren't following the guidelines, and they're trying to be the first exception, that leads to many more down the road. And again, we can't just take it at face value that the folks that are making decisions know what they're doing. And we really can't take it at face value that when there's a staff report issued, that City Council is going to have a good understanding of it, or they're going to be presented with factual information necessarily. It's really our job as individuals to be aware of what's going on in our neighborhoods, to advocate for and be critical of those that aren't following the rules, and speak up for that. So if anybody wants to join on public comment to echo any of those things, that's great. We'd appreciate it. If anybody wants to show up in person, the afternoon session at 1:30, we're case number 63, which is the first one. And if you can't make it in either case and you can log on, I'm sure it will be good for a few good laughs at a minimum, because we're going to leave the pitchforks at home, but we are going to be throwing some bombs tomorrow. So looking forward to it. Appreciate everybody that has helped us in this, and I'm happy to answer any specific or direct questions about it. I mean, trying to unpack like 2 years worth of ridiculousness in 2 minutes or less, but I'm happy to give a high level overview or answer any specific questions if anybody has any.
I'll ask a dumb one maybe. The Urban Tampa Bay folks obviously have not spoken too fondly about this activity, but in general don't seem to be particularly big fans of 717 or the Acardis. Have you reached out to them at all?
We have, yeah. And, we've actually reached out to the media. There are a couple options I can, that have been covered. I can forward those to Stephanie if y'all are generally interested. But yeah, Urban is very critical of this. I mean, it's almost like, David Bailey, who's also on the board now, we're kind of joking around that this is just so absolutely ridiculous. It's like an old Scooby-Doo cartoon episode where they figure out who the villain is at the end, and then they unmask them, and we think that it's Jason Accardi that's the villain, and you unmask it, it's really Eric Cotton. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's absolutely sort of mind-blowing how bad this whole situation is. But what it really does is unlock a very dangerous precedent for the city of Tampa. I mean, by allowing this sort of found letter that we believe to be fabricated 20 years after the fact, from an organization that didn't own the property at the time the letter was written, with no agent affidavit or, knowledge of those owners, if they're allowing this to go in, I could essentially write up something on an old piece of paper and say that VM Ebor himself, deeded the whole area over to my great grandpappy, and what can you guys do about it? That's how really ridiculous the whole thing is. So yeah, they've gotten behind it, but again, there's just so many technicalities. Long story longer. It's it shouldn't happen in this particular case, and this is not just a single parking lot issue like we were talking about earlier. I think this is a more egregious issue, and we have to kind of take a hard look at folks maybe like 717 Parking or other operators like that are in Tampa that are basically just using the city and their property as an ATM, and not paying their fair share in property taxes, and competing with City of Tampa revenue, a la people are using these surface parking lots because there's no security and they can have block parties. And what happens to the parking garages? Well, they sit empty. Why would you try and have a block party in a parking garage when there are security guards that'll tell you to beat it if you can go sit on one of these lots and no harm, no foul, and the police really can't do anything because you're on private property. So but yeah, great point. I mean, we've tried the shotgun approach and sort of been ongoing. We're throwing everything that we can up against the wall to see how we can get this to stop. But I think the kind of systemic problem, again, goes back to the fact that maybe it's the folks in zoning, that may not know what's going on, or they don't care. I mean, we've had meetings with the city staff, and we've actually had meetings with the mayor, and, we're sitting here saying, like, the city of Tampa, nobody can open their phone without seeing some sort of article about how Tampa is one of the best cities on the planet, right? And we need to elevate our standard of what's acceptable and be more forward-looking with the kind of things that we're going to allow into the future, because you can't have a great city and then have these sort of fat and happy, bureaucrats that aren't willing to hold people to a higher standard and aren't willing to think about how's this going to impact the future. How's it going to impact the revenue for the city, et cetera? It's not just these parking lots. There's all sorts of buildings, on 7th Avenue owned by various people that are boarded up, and they don't want to do anything with them. They won't file for facade grants to at least even make the outside of them look great. And they don't want to sell them because they want, 2049 prices today. So.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I've said before that, look, I mean, this is obviously all real estate and everything else. And I've said before that, frankly, anytime you look at something from that real estate appraiser's eye, right, they're the only folks who are going to call a parking lot an improvement, right, on the natural land. And so I think that, there, as you said, there are some people who are pretty critical, which is the reason I kind of asked about, like the urban Tampa Bay folks and stuff like that, because I think they're looking at sort of the larger picture of, this activity is, holding certain parts of the city back, right? And I mean, I know in Ybor, for example, there was a church that was torn down just off of 4th. I can't remember the cross street there, that became a parking lot, right? And I mean, it's been many years ago now, but nevertheless, it just kind of goes to show that again, that's hard to call that an improvement on the land, right? Because I mean, it was already an improved property. It was an active church until it was sold and torn down. So anyway, I feel like there are people who can confidently speak to that, which is the reason for my question.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
One of the issues with the city is a lot of times the staff are disempowered by the legal department. And if you look historically, the city attorney and most of the lower level attorneys are land use attorneys, and they come from private sector, and they are not advocating for the neighborhood. And that's a challenge. You may think, well, I can't tell you how many staff reports I've looked at, and I said, even from bodies that I highly respect, but they're not representative of what should be advocated for a forward-looking city. So, I mean, I don't know what to say, but we really have a crisis of the city attorneys, because they are many of them, if not all of them, are land use came from the private sector, and they're subservient to developers. It's just the way it is. So you're right. We have to scrutinize that.
Yeah.
And I would add to that, that the legal department often scares the crap out of people about being sued. And so they don't enforce existing guidelines and things because of that. So it's really troubling. And I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain, but when you're talking about 717, we had a big case here in Hyde Park that actually went to arbitration about 717. And I believe Michelini was involved.
Of course.
But it was quite embarrassing, actually. It was about the South Howard corridor where we now have all of these bars and stuff and, parking issues. And somebody was one of the people were trying to get an expansion, more hours, higher capacity, more density in the alcohol business. And, the neighbors who live along there were particularly upset about it. And, because people are parking in their front lawns and, all kinds of crazy stuff is happening. And anyway, it eventually went to arbitration. Council directed it to arbitration. And there was a video shown to the judge that 717 manufactured, and it just showed them to be a completely irresponsible operator. For example, there are certain lots that were supposed to have been attached to a specific business when that case was reviewed for an alcohol permit and for zoning and things like that. And 717 was on their own recording saying that they just share all the lots across businesses and that there is no attachment to a business, which is not the way it was put into law. And then further, they were testifying that they don't want citizens to park their own cars because they know how to park them in tighter. And a lot that's zoned for 20 cars, well, they can get 30 cars in it if they do it themselves. I mean, just all kinds of egregious things that were, against the law, the rules, et cetera. And they were on tape bragging about how efficient their business was. And it was their undoing, and they lost this particular case. But I'll think about it overnight if I can come up with the details, because that's just kind of a vague story that you probably can't use. But if I can remember the business and the year and everything else, that might go to establishing, some precedents that they're not a responsible operator.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they even try to dispute that. The mayor directed city staff and the YCDC to kind of look into the private parking operators in Ybor City. And we had crime statistics from TPD, and I mean, they were alarming. I can share those, but I think you already know how this story is going to end. It was, something like 12-1 on, vehicle break-ins, and 6-1, in vehicle thefts, and, just you name it. And these are all 6-1 in favor of, the city being better because they have, attendance at their lots like they're supposed to in the code. And Steve McElhaney and Jason Accardi didn't even really take exception to it. They just said, well, we feel like then, the YCDC should allocate some funds to where TPD can also monitor the private lots as well, and we're like, well, why would they do that? That's a cost of doing business. Well, but then, we couldn't make enough money doing it. It's like, okay, well, that's like saying, any other business, why the city of Tampa's got to hire, servers to work at the Columbia because, the Gonsmarts don't feel like they're making enough money. I mean, it's insane. If the business model doesn't work, find something else to do with it. And, it's just, I think they've been getting away with it so long. Possibly we could probably have a 3 or 4 hour Zoom call about, 717 parking. I think they got not a lot of friends, but, the only thing that seemed to, and I think they know a lot of people, within the city and the mayor and stuff like that. I don't know to what degree, but the only thing that seemed to, make an impact was when we started talking about, this company competing with city, the city for dollars, basically, right? They're pulling money out of the city's pocket in terms of tax dollars. Their private parking lots are being taxed, about, or a private business would be taxed at a rate about 8 times higher than a parking lot. People aren't feeding the meter for the city if they're parking in these other things. The mayor kind of wrote that down, but, that's parking is one of the few revenue generators for the city. I mean, it's taxes and parking. And so why the city is not being more forceful about it, not only in Ybor, but Hyde Park. And then why is the city not looking at it more from a standpoint of why are we not maximizing our revenues, however we can do it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Last week I was meeting with Vic Bide, this guy who's in charge of mobility
Parking,
and
yep.
bunch of stuff. And he actually was talking about parking as a profit center. And actually, a little piece of good news is he said that they have revenues in parking that they are now appropriating to do sidewalk repairs in neighborhoods,
Nice.
which I actually, just a little bit of good news to throw into the discussion.
Yeah, definitely. So, but I think we've personally seen, from a what are we learning from this? I mean, this has been a big drain to historic Ybor Neighborhood Civic Association, like the other story that we had heard earlier about kind of a defunct board being reinvigorated. This has taken up so much of our time over the past couple of years. But what it's taught us is that, lessons you guys have already learned, if there's an issue, it's going to bring people out in force. And, there's safety in numbers and there's power in numbers. Obviously, the more folks you can get to show up and, the more you can advocate with your neighbors, whether, it's Ybor and Hyde Park or Channelside and Tampa Heights or VM and, and any, for example, you're going to get a lot better response, when you bring something to the table with a bunch of folks together.
Chris, Carol Ann and I both, I don't know if Sandy did or not, have watched that. And it just, my mouth hanging open at the ridiculousness of, I found a letter in a box from 20 years story. Wow. It was one of the most interesting things I've seen, and how anybody could believe. I mean, it's so far-fetched that it's like listen to somebody tell a fairy tale. Hey, everybody, watch this. It just doesn't make sense at all. But your hearing is a little different than everybody what we normally see. We can't comment on that, correct? We can't comment on your hearing. There's no public comment on your hearing, correct?
Well, if they open it up to public comment, there's a chance. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are doing it. In the morning session, during public comment, you can obviously talk about the high level overview stuff.
Yes.
In the afternoon, they may only recognize. I mean, we've been shut down at every turn by the city attorney's office, and we've tried a couple other different avenues. So we think we may actually get our day in court tomorrow. But it just depends. Either we're feeling like everybody will be able to talk, or maybe nobody will be able to talk, or the people that have been involved in it, writing letters and stuff so far have. So I don't know. I wish I could give you a straight answer on that.
So everybody can send an email to Tampa City Council at tampagov.net and say we support the neighborhood on the case number 63 against 717. We have our neighborhoods take precedent. The rules should remain the rules that have been in place for the last 2 decades. Everybody can do that, and we can talk about. We can't talk about details. But I'll tell you something, Mr. Delby will shut you down. But you can't stand there, and I think this goes along with what Mary Lou was saying. Is that the whole reason why we have rules is because they're rules, and we have to push back on those and say the rules are the rules for a reason, and we need to continue to have people follow the rules. If we're not going to have rules, then let's just have anarchy. But I don't believe in that. And I'm going to tell you the thing that I find the most egregious about 717 is they can't seem to find it in their greedy little hearts to give 10 foot worth of easement to the Jackson House. To me, people like that are so that they don't feel like they should contribute anything back to society is disgusting. And I have actually sent a couple of emails to Devin about that. Every time I see it, it's bad. And I just tell them, the bottom line is if you're blessed, you should be others at the same time. It's something like that that's important to other people. It might not be the most important thing to me, but it's very, very important to other people. And to see that something like that is so important to somebody else, and they choose not to give a little bit of what they have back to the community to do something good that everybody will benefit from in the future. That to me shows their character. And so, and I'll get off my soapbox now. Of course, I have a lot of soapboxes, and I just jump from one to the next. But I did watch that hearing, and my mouth just hung open. It was almost as crazy as item number 7 on last week's agenda. That will take the cake. If you don't have anything else to do, you can watch item number 7 from last week's agenda, because your mouth will hang open in the same style in which it was when I watched y'all's hearing. But no, I will certainly make some comments about why do we have code? Why do we have overlay? The city has rules for a reason, and it's time that we start sticking to them instead of just making up stuff as we go along. Does anybody have any other questions, concerns, comments?
Yeah, I'll just throw one more in there. I think, when a big problem we're having with this case is kind of a broader problem, and that's the sense that the rules and the code that are on the books aren't being followed, but they're also not being enforced. And city staff is all kind of pointing in the opposite direction, like the scarecrow on the Wizard of Oz, going, well, it's not us, it's someone else, not us, someone else. And, zoning is saying, well, we can't, this is a code enforcement thing, and code enforcement's going, well, we only have people that are on until 5 p.m. And, and in another case, well, they may not really know, that our one code enforcement officer was, just got hired, and previously they were a lifeguard, literally. And, and it's like, so, okay, there's a bigger problem. And really what that is that, we don't have consistency. We don't have continuity. The mayor did say, hey, it's not like we don't have the money to put code enforcement officers out there. We do have the money if that's what the problem is. So I think it's really keeping the screws turned to the mayor and to the heads of these departments and saying, like, look, this problem is not getting fixed, and we are not going away until it does get fixed. And if you can't make the appropriate adjustments, tell me who can. And it may just be going directly to the mayor or Janelle McGregor to get to the mayor every single time, every single time you have a problem, because eventually somebody's going to get sick of hearing from all of us.
I concur.
I just have something very quickly. I have, there's a sentence that is at the bottom, at the end of the staff reports, and I want to read it to you. Even after they find things consistent or inconsistent, this is what they put. And I think it's biased. It's trying to push the city council to make a decision. And it says, allowing the waiver, if this is a waiver that you're going against, will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by this chapter and other applicable City of Tampa land development regulations, the comprehensive and the other individual hardships that will be suffered by a failure of city council to grant this waiver. To me, that is a signal to city council that you need to pass this waiver. I have asked that they strike that from the staff reports, because justice is not being served if it's interrupting a neighborhood, if it's doing anything that's going to disrupt our neighborhood. It does do harm. For example, if you do a parking waiver and all of a sudden we have twice as many cars. So I've talked to a couple of city councilmen about getting that thrown out. I'm showing it to you because if you go before city council on a hearing on a rezoning, you should bring that up, because whatever they're asking is not at our benefit. And this should be taken out, especially the word justice. It makes it sound like somebody has made a decision and this is going to give justice to who? The developer? What about justice for the community? So just to something a little to go along with what you're saying when you go before city council for different things, look for this in the staff report and then fight it and bring it up and say, this should not be in there. This needs to be stricken, because this, as far as I'm concerned, it is telling them what they should do. And it should not be in there. I'm done.
Thank you. Great point, and I agree with you on that.
Anybody else? But make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll just add real quick, I'm right there with your motion to adjourn. I just wanted to add that, Sandy, if you did want to go complain about that, you know, I posted a note in the chat there, but I've often kind of mentioned that the staff reports use another term, which is a little bit misleading, which is the term consistent, because our city council people are not necessarily all equally informed, as I know that we're aware. And you know, if a bunch of neighbors go forth and they say, hey, this proposal, this plan, it doesn't blend in with the neighborhood, right? Or it doesn't match the historical development pattern or whatever, right? They see a staff report that says, hey, it's consistent, right? Which to a normal person's ear, right? You hear consistent and you're thinking like pudding or something, right? It's consistent. It's the same, it's the same throughout, right? And what the staff report is saying is that the proposal is acceptable to the law, right? And that's the way that they're using the word consistent. And so kind of because of this education gap, right? As we were just saying, right, the council ends up weighing the staff report more heavily, probably under misguided pretense.
That's right. It's exactly what I'm saying. You know, I mean, it's the other thing that we're finding is it's inconsistent, and then 3 weeks before the hearing, things become consistent. And now they're going to make changes between first and second reading. And one of the other things that I have asked for is for them not to be able to do that. We have one that back in October, they made a list of about 15 things that this developer had to put into the site plans. Okay, go before city council. None of those have been added to the site plan or have been added to any conversation within that claim. So what happens is now all of a sudden they're going to make decisions, like huge decisions, like landscape plans, at setbacks and all this. If it doesn't have all the information in the file when they go to the first hearing, they should not be heard, because it's not fair to city council for those that do read and those that do pay attention, because they don't have enough information. That marathon that we had last Thursday night, they found 2 or 3 of those that even the site plan wasn't correct. It was a site plan that was old, not new. It was inconsistent. They had the wrong information that, you know, they should not have been allowed. And when they do something like that, and depending on whether it's the city or the developer, there should be a stop right there and say, if this information that you were asked to put in the file 3 months ago is not in there, then it should not move forward. I'm done again.
All right.
We could talk all night about this.
I know.
nonsense. We should have maybe like a periodic band discussion group. Hey, don't forget, if you're still on here, Breakfast with Bill is the 21st at Wright's Deli at 8 a.m. Breakfast with Bill is basically for the neighborhood leaders, and he's always tickle pink when he's got a good turnout. This month, Vic Beatty's going to be the guest speaker, so get your ears ready for that. I'm still stalking Vic because I found a $32,000 sidewalk.
Oh, we're losing you again, Stephanie. You're breaking up again, Stephanie.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I will second your motion to adjourn.
South side of the street.
Sorry to do this to you, Stephanie. The meeting is adjourned.
All right.
Bye.
All right,
Sure.
bye.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good one.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Chris.